showing up for today. Um, it's great seeing everyone here. I hope yesterday's events um, went fantastic as well. And thank you for inviting us to do this talk as well. It's nice to be able to like present some of the
Mhm.
the learning that we've found so far. Um, so today we're talking about creating art for mods, some kind of art tips in general and such. Um, I think we're going to start with some introductions. I'm Crippers. I work on the create team. I'm one of the art team, and uh, I do a bit of work with kind of concepts and like trying to flesh out the mechanics so that our fantastic like code development team can work on those. Um, Rita, do you want to give us a quick introduction?
Yeah. First off, thank you everyone for coming, of course, and thank you, Peppers, for the introduction. I'm Reda, also known as FluFips around, I guess, the Minecraft community. Um, right now, I'm mostly focusing on the thermal mods, but I'm also working on Thaumcraft on the back end. And we're going to be basically giving you what we've learned throughout our journey and some tips on how to get into, I guess, making assets for mods and what we've learned through our experiences.
Cool. Um, so we figured that the best way to kind of go about this was to divide this talk into three sections. We're going to start off with something which is a bit more beginner friendly, then move to like an intermediate subject and then an expert, so that hopefully we can broach topics that
Mhm.
everyone is going to be able to make use of. And
Yeah,
with that being said, I think we're good to go. Rita, do you want to get us started?
of course. All right.
Cool.
So our first point is, I guess, how to get into making assets for mods. Um, I personally kind of got into the community by accident. Um, I was posting some pixel art on the Feed the Beast Reddit, um, and King Lemming, the developer of the thermal mods, actually reached out to me and asked me to join their team. Um, and back then, my artwork was not great, and uh, and that's okay. Um, a good thing to do, I guess. Um, is, I guess to see your improvement, uh, and how even if your art isn't as good as other people's, that doesn't mean you can't be part of a team. Now, in general, I guess here's some tips that I garnered, written down. Join discords. Okay, join art discords, join Minecraft discords. The official create discord has a lovely art channel with people in it. Also the thermal one has a lovely community you can join. Another tip would be posting on social media, um, posting your artwork, interacting with other artists, other Minecraft modders. Um, this kind of helps with networking, just getting to know people up in higher ranks in the Minecraft community. Though, I guess a tip I'd love to give is don't force anything. Sometimes it's easy to come off as overbearing in these types of scenarios. Um, but usually people are very friendly in the Minecraft community. So I guess yeah, once you're in, I guess people will start to recognize you, recognize your name, recognize your artwork, and you can slowly start to branch out. And instead of uh, working for mods that ask you, you can work on something you want to work on, something fun, something you enjoy doing. Like for example, Thumbcraft. I really like Thumbcraft, and I've enjoyed the mod for a little while, and now I'm making art for it, which is very fun. And you can also like reach um, your dream project through this, just like networking, social media, and knowing people. Yeah. Um, I think I'm gonna pass the microphone to Grippers now, and you talk
Cool.
to their part.
All right. So, talking about how we got started and such. I started out with pixel art back in I think about 2015 to 2007 kind of time. Um, that was kind of like in my early days as an artist. So it was back in the day when I kind of started off with fan art for games like Ragnarok Online, which if some of you haven't like seen the pixel art for those kind of games, you should definitely check out because they have like a wonderful style and like a nice variety of styles, so it's always worth taking a look at. Um, and yeah, so I started with it back then, um, just because of the limitations of what I had. Um, the internet was quite slow. That was back on like 56K, um, and I only had access to MS Paint. So actually having uh, kind of a spriting environment like Ragnarok and um, being able to look at the sprites and do my edits, do my fan art, that kind of such. That was like how I got started. And then I kind of took a break from it um, for quite a few years. I kind of came back into the scene about 2 years ago. Around the same time, Create released the zero point 0.2 release. Um, and yeah, I started off on the team actually as a kind of an organizer. I did just, I was helping to organize the suggestions board, doing some cleanup on some of the like the project files and such. Um, and I mentioned to Simi and the team that I used to do pixel art. Um, so I got an opportunity to start working on stuff. My art wasn't great at the time because I hadn't touched it for about 10 years. Uh, but because of my kind of my background studying the much older like pixel art styles and working with MS Paint, um, the foundations of pixel art was kind of already there. Basic concepts of um, limited palettes, composition, those kind of things. Um, but yeah, I got the fantastic opportunity of working on the team, and then it kind of took off from there. Got to work with fantastic artists, um, and yeah, just kept going. And now I'm getting pretty confident with the style. And I've been invited to this panel, so I must be doing kind of okay for that. Um, so yeah, if in that regard, if you're starting off as an artist, then I would like one of my first bits of advice is to learn how to study other artists. Um, take someone that you really like the style of, and kind of just learn from looking at the kind of assets that they're producing. Uh, and we're talking about just experiment and just take some time, really start to analyze the kind of work they're doing, um, replicate some of their styles, uh, look at the kind of colors they're using, the way they're handling their color palettes, the amount of colors in their color palettes, and how they're making the best use of that. Um, Sometimes it comes down to basic ideas of form and color shapes, and the way that they're introducing details as well. Just really start to try and like analyze what their style is and just enjoy that. And try and capture a bit of that. There will always be differences between your work and theirs. Because of like how like your experience as an artist and like how how you might actually see things differently to that artist, and slight changes that you think, actually this is something I want to improve. This is something I think it would look better in this way. That's absolutely fine. Um, and yeah, it's just start working there, and when you're feeling more confident with that, try and find a different artist, look at the way they're doing things, and just really build up your confidence in that regard. Uh, I think once you're kind of confident with that, you're something else I try to encourage is the use of reference libraries. Um, our team quite often gets a talk from me about the use of narrative when it comes to designing art, especially when it comes to the design aspect of it, more so than just the art aspect. Um, and when I'm talking about narrative, I'm talking about if you're asked to design a block, or if you're trying to design a texture, or even if you're just working on like a project which is completely separate from Minecraft or pixel art, um, having this confident narrative about what you're doing, uh, and the kind of use case of the block, the um, the the story that's behind it. How was it made? What materials is it made of? What's the function of it? If you are confident with these factors, and then you combine that with the technical limitations that you have, be it the mechanism the block is for, um, the limitations of the palette, or the 16 pixel sprite size. If you combine like the narrative with the limitations, most of the design is pretty much done for you already. It's just now a case of putting those different aspects together and making it look as good as you can. We get this a lot with Create, because where everything is quite mechanically based, we try and ground these designs a lot in like core mechanical principles. Um, so when we're designing something, we will look at you know if it's a block that requires a lot of internal pressure, like a fluid tank or a spout, you'll see details like riveting. The shape will look like it can withstand the pressure. I believe the spout has metallic bands that run around it to make it look like it's capable of withstanding the internal pressure of fluid. And those kind of design aspects, they really help sell an idea. So when a player looks at it, they can say, oh yeah, okay, I get an impression of how this block should be used just from the visual design. Um, okay, and like going back to the idea of reference libraries, this the best way to the best way to have an idea as to the narrative is to make sure that you are confident with real life examples, or at least certain tropes and design trends. And one of the tricks I've been using for this, uh, I've got accounts on both Pinterest and ArtStation. Um, and what I will do is I will make collections of artwork. Uh, so anytime that if I'm browsing through um, and I see anything that interests me, be it if it's just something that just catches my eye, it's a design I think is particularly clever, or it's achieved something that I would like to be able to achieve myself, then I will save it. So then I can come back to it later, and if I have a similar idea, I can say, okay, how has this artist achieved this result? And then you can go back and you can use that as a jumping off point. Um, and that kind of works really well for me. And making sure that uh, you have that strong visual library really just helps to um, really kind of kick off the initial style. Uh, Yeah. Um, Again, if you're working with a within like a certain project, like if you're working for Thermal or Create or Thermcraft or any of these things, then also like be aware of the context that these mods provide. Look at the kind of style, the look at the what kind of aesthetic they are trying to establish with these blocks. Like with the existing blocks, even if you're doing like a full overhaul of the entire series of sprites, uh, take a look at some of the ideas so that you're not just completely eroding everything that's come before you, and just build off of what's already established, and you should have a pretty good time with that. Uh, yeah, so I think that's my first one.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay. So I guess to keep in theme with the context and everything, I wanted to talk about cohesion and theming around making assets, or basically not to make assets in a vacuum, or like making assets um, as like an independent texture from everything else, because it could easily look out of place and not work with anything else. Now, it's easy to have this happen, but you can actually just basically put all your assets into the same file and work in tandem with them by checking the lighting and checking the palettes, checking the style, uh, to make sure, I guess, nothing looks too out of place around each other. Um, Now, I guess I wanted to get into the more nitty gritty of making textures, aka talking about noise, contrast, hue shifting, and everything. Um, so yeah, I guess I could start with noise. So noise is basically, instead of choosing individual pixels, colors, you basically use a noise brush to give some texture. And what a noise brush does is put uh, random random pixels of different like brightness um, around the texture, and this usually works for normal art, like digital art or high scale pixel art. But for such a small scale at like 16 by 16, it gets very noticeable that you're not, I guess, choosing the context of each pixel, and it ends up looking a bit muddy or yeah, hard to look at. Um, Now, okay, so contrast. Contrast is basically the difference in brightness between each pixel. Um, Now, something I used to do when I was first starting out is actually using the same palette for items and blocks of the same type. But recently I've learned that actually uh, items have much more contrast than blocks. And this is because they don't have any lighting applied to them inside of the inventory, so they look nice as is. Um, Although for blocks, they actually use a different, more dull palette with much less contrast. Um, because in world they actually have, I guess, inward lighting um, to help the look. A good example is the copper block and the copper item. If you compare them, the copper item has a very high contrast, um, while the block is very dull, so it can fit in with other blocks, other palettes, etc. Um, yeah. Okay. So uh, another point I wanted to talk about is hue shifting. Hue shifting is when you start out your palette, the lightest color tends to to be at a lighter hue, more towards the yellow, I guess, warmer hues, yellow, red, etc. And then as Yes, as the palette gets darker and darker, um, you tend to shift more towards purples or blues. Now, if you don't uh, use this technique of hue shifting, your textures might look a little more dull than you'd like to be because you're basically shading with black or only changing the brightness of the block. Um, yes. This is the case with older textures or programmer art. It's very noticeable in pre 1.14 artwork or before the texture update. Though nowadays, hue shifting has been used to, I guess, its full potential, um, and you can notice this in any of the recent blocks, really. A good example would be the azalea leaves have very beautiful hue shifting. Something else could, yeah, the block of gold actually has a really nice hue shifting. And I'd really recommend like studying these recent textures to really get an idea on how it's all handled. Um, okay. Uh,
Okay.
mhm. uh, I also wanted to talk about readability. Readability is when it's hard for someone except for you to understand what you're trying to achieve. Um, this is it's an easy mistake to fall into when you're making textures in a vacuum or only like working on texture and sending it off. You're not sure if the team is actually gonna read what you're trying to achieve or what you're trying to make. So it's good to get like feedback from both the team and the community. Um, because sometimes if you make a texture, the team will understand because they have the context and everything, but the community, the modding community, might not completely wrap their mind around what's going on, and they might have a hard time recognizing the item or the block. Uh, yeah, and finally, my last point for this part is accessibility. Um, this has been something we've been looking into with the thermal series, um, where I guess it's easy to make blocks look a bit too similar. Um, this was the case with pre 114, no, yeah, pre 117 ores, where they all had the same exact shape with only different colors. This was actually a big problem for a lot of colorblind people, and we tried to give each ore a different shape and a different palette to differentiate between them. And Vanilla had followed suit shortly after. Um, so a good way to avoid this is to run a black and white filter over your assets, uh, over your asset sheet actually to make sure no textures look too similar to each other. So as you might confuse them. Um, yeah. Something else, I guess, is it's okay to actually retouch old assets. Like when you're starting out, you can make a texture you're proud of and happy with, and it's not a bad texture at all. It's a very good texture, but with pixel art, I guess you're constantly improving. So it's good to sometimes just go back to assets you've made months ago or years ago and just give them a small touch up, and you will see that your improvement has actually, uh, I guess, brought you a lot in terms of yeah making assets and choosing colors, contrast, hue shifting, readability, silhouettes, and yeah accessibility. Yeah, there you go.
Cool. Yeah, I absolutely agree with the idea of retouching. I don't know if there's been a create update that hasn't retouched some of the assets in some way. Um, be it the the appearance of brass, or maybe we update the texture of a block so that the function is more readable to a player. Um, and indeed, yeah, accessibility is also something that we try and aim for as well. All of our metal ingots, uh, which is the kind of artwork that Danny usually handles. Um, yeah, all of those ingots have a slight different shape to them, so that again, people who have some element of color blindness or anything else which might hinder their appearance, hinder their ability to identify the blocks um, just based on color. It gives them like an opportunity to engage with those more reliably. So I absolutely agree. Accessibility and retouching are two huge factors that we handle a lot when it comes to create. Um, so for so kind of intermediate, I would like to talk for a bit about kind of staying safe as an artist. Because it's great to be able to produce all of these art assets, but sometimes I get a lot of questions coming to me sometimes about if I'm joining a team or if I'm joining a company. There's a lot of companies that produce art assets for the marketplace, or maybe you want to get into the kind of commission scene. Um, I've had a few people come to me and say, how much should I charge? Uh, that kind of information. Um, so I'll get to kind of the element of how much do you charge in a little while. But I actually had an experience recently that I would like to I would like to talk about. Um, I applied for some jobs to some of the marketplace uh, companies. There were a couple that caught my eye, so I sent an application off. Um, and because of the work I'd done on Create and because of some of my background, um, I already had a portfolio on ArtStation, um, which kind of presented this, the work I'd done to these people, and they were really pleased with it. So on that note, the thank you, Grim. Um, the there is always like worth keeping even like pixel art for a block game on your portfolio because it's good work. You can sometimes really leverage that to get yourself further in a career when it comes to game art or to any of those things. Um, but yeah, I'd applied for a couple of companies and I had a good experience with one. Um, and I thought I was having a pretty good experience with the second as well. Like I won't name names for legal reasons. But with the second, I was pretty confident with them. They were asking me what my hourly rate was. Um, and yeah, I had just a verbal interview with them just to talk about me and my background and what I was looking for and what they could provide. And that sounded great. It sounded absolutely great to me. Um, at the end of beg pardon. At the end of the interview, they said, "Yep, within the end of the week, we'll come back to you with how it goes and where we are moving forward." Cool. It was kind of like a Thursday, Friday anyway, so I figured a couple of days I'll get to hear back. That is absolutely great. I didn't hear anything for a week, so I came back to them. I prompted them. I said, "What's going on? What's the situation like?" Uh, and all of a sudden they sprung back into action. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We've got some stuff for you. It's going to be tonight. It's going to be the second stage of the interview. Okay. I didn't. There would be no mention so far there was even going to be a second stage of the interview. So immediately I kind of ticked a red flag there. Um, and they presented me with this task. They said, "Yep, you've got 48 to 72 hours. Work off some of these prompts, produce a model, and we'll take it from there." And then I got a small message, and they said, because you did so well, we're just going to give you a little heads up. Um, some people like to produce multiple models. and it really helps their chances. And there may be a chance that your model even gets used by the team. Right. Yeah. So I immediately, my thought was, okay, am I going to get paid? And they said, no, no, you're not going to get paid for this work. So I said to them at that moment, well, no, sorry guys, that's a big red flag. I'm gonna have to kind of walk away. You can't get these people to do the artwork for free. Uh, that's not cool. That's not how these things should work. You know, if they're a company, they need to be able to pay you for your time. Um, and as soon as I said that, they started backtracking. They're like, "Oh, well, sorry, that's my fault. I should have told you there was going to be a second stage, and if the team thinks they're going to use your model, then obviously you're going to get paid for it." But it was at that stage I walked away, because they kind of I'd lost the trust with the company at that point. Um, so yeah, make sure that if you're producing artwork for people, uh, especially companies, make sure that your time is being paid, because your time is valuable. Um, and I'll get into a bit like the difference between doing something as a volunteer, but generally speaking, if you're being hired by a person or a company, make sure that you're being compensated, because of course, it's your time. You need to be compensated for it. Um, and genuinely, there could have been the company could have been honest. It might have just been an honest mistake. They might have been so busy that they forgot to mention the second half. And indeed, I could have been paid for the work, if they decided to use it. But yeah, it is suspicious. So if that's going to be the attitude they take from me at the interview stage, that's going to be kind of my impression of them going forward. So they're a company; they should be able to do better than that. So yeah, um, but yeah, back on the subject of kind of knowing what you're worth. I worked in kind of the years and years between when I started pixel art and when I kind of picked up again. I worked as a model maker in the architectural industry. Um, so I picked up a lot there about how to run businesses as a freelancer. Um, so if you're getting started and you're not sure like what to charge with the kind of work, if you are doing commissions, there's a super simple formula for that. You need to take your hourly rate, which is how much your time is worth to you per hour. You need to multiply that by the amount of hours you think it's going to take to complete the job. You need to add on um, any material costs, be it wear and tear. If you're getting into physical art, then obviously you need to be paid for the use on um, any art materials you have to use. And then once you have all that together, you generally add about 20% on top, and that is your profit margin. Um, and that's kind of a good place to start. If you're ever thinking to yourself, how much do I charge? Run that kind of formula for a bit. See how the numbers get uh, turn out. Tweak it if you want to, and then use that as your kind of starting point. You can always negotiate it up or down. Although usually it is easier to start at a higher point and negotiate down if you need to, if you really need to land the job. Um, uh, and yeah, when it comes to like choosing what your time is worth, anytime you're doing work for someone, you need to ask yourself, if I wasn't doing this work, uh, what would I rather be doing? Um, if you're having to do something because it's taking you, and especially if you're doing it in your free time, um, like as a secondary source of income. Um, if you know if this is taking you away from your hobbies and stuff, then how much would someone have to pay you to take you away from the things you would personally like to do? Um, uh, and this is that's just generally the best place to get started with that. Because when let's say you really wanted to do something and someone was desperate to get you working, then you can um, you can say to them, look, my time is worth this much to me. This is how much you would have to pay me to not do the thing that I would want to do. Um, and if you if they're not happy with paying you for the time that you think your time is worth, then again, walk away. Uh, you don't ever have to be compelled to do something or to take a job. And that's where we get into like the difference between being paid for your work and like volunteering your time. Because when I'm working for Create, it is the thing that I want to be doing in my spare time. So I don't take any compensation for that. Because if if I wasn't if someone wasn't paying me, I would still be doing it anyway. So that's how you would learn the distinction between, uh, you know, when is it okay for my time to be free, and it's generally because it's the kind of thing that you want to be working on. Uh, so yeah. Um, do you want to take over for a bit, Rita?
Yeah, of course.
Fantastic.
I totally agree. By the way, if there is something you don't want to do, but you're being compensated with it, you can kind of make peace with that. But if it's something you don't want to do and you're not being compensated, it's easy to just get easily very like demotivated and not want to work on it. And that is your right. You don't have to work on this thing if you don't want to or not being compensated. Um, a big part of being in the Minecraft community is having fun. After all, for a lot of us here, it is just a hobby and not a job. But if a job does come up, um, I guess it's kind of necessary for compensation if you're not as interested in the project as you should be, I guess. Yeah. Uh, oh, I wanted to talk about your role as an artist in projects. Um, so I guess you're not just a Minecraft artist. Um, you're also your own person, and uh, your hobbies, your interests, and everything influence whatever you produce. For example, before I actually started pixel art, um, I was and I still am a horror artist, and uh, my horror artwork actually does influence what I produce and what I make, and that influence comes through in a lot of the stuff have been making for both Thaumcraft and my own projects, which are mostly like horror-based Minecraft mods that are still in production. Um, yeah, yeah. Speaking of production, actually, a good thing, or I guess the perfect situation with like making assets for mods is that you actually need to be part of a team you're working with. Um, it's it's not great when you're just sitting on the side of the production team and just like sending them assets as they need them. Um, Again, this comes back to the making artwork in a vacuum. Uh, as you're not communicating with the team, you don't get the ideas, the concept stages, the idealization of concepts. You're just producing assets, and that's it. That's your whole role, and that can get again very demotivating, um, and it can show in your quality, which is something you, of course, want to avoid. So yeah, networking with these people, becoming, part of a team and just collaborating, talking. You as an artist can, and it is your right to come up with ideas and develop your own concepts for whatever mod you're working on. Um, and it's actually very, very good for you or for the whole mod if, yeah, the artist is more involved into the production, than just, supplying assets like a factory. And this goes both ways, of course. It's very mutual. If you understand uh, the project and its limitations, you can give your maximum to the assets that are needed. And if they understand the limitations of Minecraft's art system, which, there are a lot, of course. First off, there's the resolution that is locked at 60. It's not locked, but usually you go with 16. Use as little cubes as possible, or I guess use the necessary cubes you need instead of um, just going ham and uh, doing whatever looks good in a non-Minecraft context. So yeah, part of knowing your limits as a Minecraft artist is working on your own projects. Um, for example, I only started out as an artist, and I slowly started coding by just being part of the community. And I do actually have projects of my own, and these projects um, help me understand what it is like to work with the Minecraft engine, what it is like to work with other modders, what it's like to uh, implement these models, features, textures. Um, into the mod, and it's good to have your own project that you can test things on, um, or test new techniques, new systems, etc. before uh, using them with a team you're not like as involved in as you'd like to be. For example, yeah, I have two mods in production. Personally, one of them is an end expansion mod, and I've actually learned a lot by just working on it on my own. I've learned a lot about world generation. I've learned a lot about actual features, coding features, and this has actually influenced the way I create the models and textures um, for this mod and subsequently other mods that I'm not the head of. Um, Also, having your own project can help you, I guess, evolve as an artist. Um, you can you can more easily just work on your own ideas, see what works, see what doesn't work, what sticks, etc. Uh, a good example, I guess, would be a space mod I'm working on. Um, First off, we had this idea of uh, having spaceships be their own dimensions. And of course, that sounded, fine at first, but after we started thinking about multiplayer and everything, we realized that could get problematic with having a dimension for each person. Um, so of course we started talking about it, started like bouncing ideas off of each other, and it ended up becoming, instead of having a dimension for each spaceship, we have one dimension for every spaceship. And this is just an example of uh, what can happen when you're actually part of a team and part of the design team, um, part of the person who, I guess you're a person who does supply the team with concepts and ideas. Um, And yeah, another thing would be concept art. Yeah, um, concept art is an extremely important part of making artwork for mods. Sometimes you just it's easy to like jump into pixel art directly without even an idea of what you're going to be creating or what are you going to be making. So it's good to just sit down, look at the mod as a whole, and come up with some concept art. Uh, I guess I should explain what that is. Concept art, for those who don't know, is artwork that showcases an idea as a whole instead of focusing on the texture itself. Um, for example, um, again, I keep bringing this up. Before Thumbcraft, we've been like working on concept art way before even jumping into making assets for the mod, like creating mobs and stuff. Actually, like drawing up the models before we ever even jump into making them is a good way to both know the limitations of what we're trying to make and see what sticks before jumping into said pixel art. Um, yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, fantastic. And yeah, I totally agree. Having like a fantastic team behind you as an artist is such a refreshing feeling. Um, the Create team, and some of them are here today, which is fantastic. Uh, Being able to work with these guys has just been such a pleasure, because the environment that we are in is that if anyone has an idea, no matter how wild or extravagant, we will find the time to explore it. And that could be something as simple as me or one of the artists coming up with just a piece of pixel art, which then gets kind of worked on and developed, iterated, and then introduced. And not all of them do. Some of them do get rejected, but that's part of the process. Uh, and sometimes it's a mechanical thing as well. It goes the other way. Sometimes one of our team members will say, what if this block worked like this? Um, and then the art team would make corrections, and we get it working. And it turns out to be one of the best features. I know when we had our point three, I want to say, release, um, we had an item called the weighted ejector, which is very similar to the aerial faithplate in Portal. And generally, it was just we had a mechanical reason to have a one of our depot blocks that just pushed an item to an adjacent space. Um, and then Evan, one of our team members, he said, "Oh yeah, it should totally fling players across the map." We're like, "No, that's ridiculous." But we explored it, and it turned out to be one of my favorite features for the entire release. And I still have great fun using the weighted ejectors to bounce myself around the level. Um, but yeah, and also what you're saying about concept art. Um, yeah, being able to either conceptualize an idea before you go into production to save you because pixel art can sometimes be quite a slow process going back and forth, uh, and making sure the design is perfect. If you can save yourself the time um, by having as much of that information beforehand when it comes to pixel art and such, um, concept art, uh, then that's fantastic. Um, so yeah, I mean, finally, I think I'm going to keep this brief because we are running a bit low on time. I just wanted to talk a bit quickly about some of the tools that I use, because I get this question a lot as well, as to what do you use to produce your pixel art. Um, and I usually have like gosh, about 5 different softwares which I'll use for two different for different purposes. Um, Primarily, I use Blender and GIMP. Blender's a 3D package which is absolutely fantastic. And I will use that because where I'm so familiar with it, um, it means that I can quickly model things, remodel them, texture them, toy around with different textures, and with that also work on kind of procedural textures as well. I can quickly apply materials or shades or different effects to the block, um, without ever having to even touch pixel art in the first place, just to get an idea of how the block is working. Um, and if I need to throw some textures on it, I will usually go through GIMP, which again is a another free piece of software. Um, it's not the greatest software, admittedly, but I have used it for a long time, and it has a lot of features that I'm super familiar with. Features which I haven't found in other pieces of software, and that would be how I kind of start my process. Um, if I'm ever doing any modeling in Blender, um, then I will make sure that I am working to the limitations that Minecraft has in regards to sticking as much I can to the pixel grid, keeping the rotations locked to the rotations that Minecraft can handle for its default models. Uh, but it does allow me to start to cheat some of those rules where I need to to get the best results. Um, and I know with some of our newer releases, we've moved into using .obj models as well to when we absolutely need to surpass the limitations that Minecraft has. Yeah, we will result. Beg pardon. We will rely on OBJ models for that as well, which is where Blender comes back into it. Um, Most recently as well, I've been using a piece of software called Substance Designer, which is part of one of the Adobe suites, and that has allowed me to build up some procedurally based textures. When it came to the some of the new stone types that we introduced when Minecraft updated to 1.18, uh, some of the stones don't have any manual pixel art to it. It is all automatically generated through noise patterns being filtered and applied to each other to get the results I needed. Um, and I will always maintain that that is uh, it's a lower quality most of the time because you don't have that kind of hand touch to it. But because we had to generate, gosh, at least 8 different stone types and maybe a dozen textures for each one to tackle all of that volume of work manually in the time frame that we had, it was a lot better um, to at least have the workflow where these blocks could be generated automatically first. And then, once we had the feedback from that, we can go back in and do some touch ups and again keep iterating on the design. But it's important to use these tools to cut out as much work as possible, to keep your sanity as an artist. Uh, and of course, Sprite is a classic piece of software. It's got some fantastic features to it, which make it perfect for doing pixel art. I mean, it's obviously designed for pixel art, so it's really tailored to that. And I'll generally uh, I will rely on a sprite when it comes to tile textures or if I'm doing animations. I will go through that workflow instead. Um, so yeah, that seems like about it. Um, I guess we'll move on to some questions if anyone has any.
You have less than a minute, I'm afraid.
Oh, well, okay. Well, if
Your
people want
talk
to
just
submit
perfectly
questions,
fit in.
then yeah, okay. If people want to submit some questions, then we'd be happy to maybe. I don't know if the Discord has somewhere we could answer those questions and people could see them that way.
We could probably make a thread for that.
Sure. Cool. And of course, if anyone has any like questions for pixel art specifically, you can find me on Twitter at Crippers, or on the Create Discord. I'm pretty active there. So if anyone has any questions that they want to like post to me, feel free to ping me, send me a DM, join in our art threads. Yeah, and we'll do the best to help out. So yeah, cool.
Yeah, you can also find me on basically the COFH Discord if you ever need anything. And yeah, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for the team for setting all this up and giving us the time to talk about this stuff.